Hello everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines in December 2022. I'm Matt Busick, President of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. We have 5 guests with us today that I'd like to begin by introducing. So if each of you could stand as I say your name, I'd appreciate it. First of all, Garrett Gillen is here from Summit Equity Group, a guest of Kevin Kassier. Welcome, Garrett. Rachel, I knew it's Rochelle. Dr. Rochelle Keck, President of Grandview University and guest of Lynette Rasmussen. Welcome. Kashawn Merchant is here. Kashawn is actually a very busy individual. Kashawn all the way in the back, everyone. Managing Director of Merchant Investment, Inc., President of National Investments Consolidated Enterprises, and Treasurer Secretary of Twin Cedars Bank. Here is a guest of Rita Perea. Kurt Simmons is here, CEO of the Science Center of Iowa, guest of Claudia Schabel. And last but not least, Nancy Zwickel. Hi Nancy, welcome. Nancy is a private banking officer with First Interstate Bank, and here is a guest of Becky Greenwald. So that's everyone. Welcome. Sue, it's time. Stand up. Yes. Everyone, a reminder that we are still looking for volunteers for ringing the bell for the Salvation Army at the Fleur Drive Hy-Vee. We're going to be there on December 10 and December 14. Sue informs me that there are 20 slots and only 8 people have volunteered so far. So we have 12 to fill. Please, if you can, we sign up online or out at the badges. We want to get that completely filled. And what better way to show the spirit of the season than ringing the bell for Salvation Army? Okay, one more thing. We have our tumblers back out on the tables today. This is in order to make it possible to make contributions to the Rotary Club of Des Moines. So if you look down at your name badge, and if your name badge has a green $sign on it, this isn't for you. If you don't have a green $sign, the suggested contribution is $3, although we're enduring a lot of inflation right now. So if you would like to go ahead and lift that by the rate of inflation. Somebody told me that the Social Security Administration is raising Social Security checks by 9% almost. Yay! Yeah, well done, Bob, well done. So I expect $1 or $2 to be in that cup from Bob Federal. Yeah. One more thing relating to the cups, the tumblers. This is something we used to do regularly before the pandemic. Now that we're on the other side of the pandemic, we're restarting this. So part of our weekly process is making sure we have volunteers to actually count the money. So we're currently missing a couple volunteers for today. Art, on my drive down here, volunteered to be one. If one or two of you could join Art following today's meeting to count the tumblers, that would be great. Remember, this is a kind of a sanity check thing. In deference to Jim, our guest speaker, we have, by process, we need to have our volunteers so that staff counts the money after and then gets it deposited. So just a process thing. Okay, now, one thing we absolutely have to check on every week is where in the world is Matt? So, here we go. Lately, I've been very busy down in Texas with the Wheeler family. So I visited both Luckenbach, Texas, the San Antonio Riverwalk, LBJ's Western White House, and the state capitol in Austin. And rumor has it, I also tasted some beer. Lone Star beer. Is there a picture of the Lone Star beer? Oh, everybody needs to know I like beer. So when you can check out the flat bat. It comes on a stick or just a regular, you can see the stick there. But when you take me, make sure that we factor in some suds somewhere along the line. This is a fun way for members to get to show where they've been traveling. So Okay, now what I'm going to do is turn the podium over to Carter Smith. Carter has a quick announcement about the mentoring program, the re-engagement process that we have underway, as well as he will lead us in the moment of inspiration, the four-way test, and then Deborah Peckham will follow him to introduce our guest speaker. Thanks, Carter.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. You get to hear from me twice today. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess we'll find out here in a few moments. First off, I want to provide an announcement from the Member Engagement Committee. Our committee this year, thanks to a lot of great work from Kevin, from Tim, from Colleen, from Paul, from others that I'm forgetting, Bob Vedral here as well. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from new and existing members on just how we can improve the experience. From some of this feedback, we realized that maybe there can be some better guidance, more information can be provided to new members as they get acclimated into the club. And with that, we're going to relaunch a mentor program. I know a lot of you in the past may have participated in something like it. My formal mentor in Rotary was Jamie Boersma. I don't know if I see Jamie here today. She was a great resource for me as I became a new member, being able to meet with her, ask questions that I maybe didn't want to ask to anyone else. So what does it look like to be a mentor? We're seeking folks in the room here today, anyone to serve as a mentor to our new members. That means being able to meet with them for a couple lunches here on Thursdays. Also being able to meet with them outside of Rotary, inviting them to different professional events, connecting them with other folks within Rotary, being able to serve as a good guide for them over the next year or so as they get onboarded. In the middle of your table, you'll find a sign-up sheet. We're inviting this to everyone. We also might tap a few of you on the shoulder to see if you'd be willing to help as well. Feel free to sign up for this opportunity. We'll collect all names and we'll reach out to you and start to pair you up with new members that we can establish a relationship with between you and them. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Bob Vedral. We're leading the Member Engagement Committee this year. Awesome. All right, and last thing you get to hear from me is the inspiration. Today I'd like to speak about gratitude. Coming off of Thanksgiving break, I think we all had, or hopefully all had an opportunity to spend some time with family and friends. Want to keep the tradition going of being grateful this time of year. I'll share a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you and give thanks continuously. And because of all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude. And that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. Another reason why I want to talk about gratitude today is because we have Jim Hayes here from Mind and Spirit Counseling Center. Deborah will talk more about his background, but I also wanted to touch on the impact gratitude has on our mental health. In looking at a few studies, doing a little research, it looks as if gratitude leads to lower stress, a stronger immune system of all things, better sleep at night, enhanced interpersonal relationships, and overall greater happiness. So for about 20 seconds or so, I'd want each of you to just think silently, what are 3 things that each of you are grateful for? Could be small, could be big. I'll take 20 seconds, and then we'll continue on. We'll call that about 20 seconds. So 3 things that I'm grateful for. We all can't share today, but I guess I'll share mine. I'm grateful just to be here today, to wake up. Grateful for Rotary's impact on my life, and grateful for each of you. Thanks for being here. All right, now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now the 4-way test.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Now please greet your neighbor.
Jordan, again. Yeah. Well, you let me know after I finish. I don't mind talking about what we did, so it's kind of hard. Let people know how it works.
How do I do it?
Right here. Well done.
You in the middle. Just in case you're thinking about doing volunteer, did y'all know that if you do the introduction, you get to listen? That's the first time I ever did that. Virgin loyalty situation here, yes.
Virgin what? Greg.
Consider the topic, Greg. We're trying to recruit him as a member. Ixnay on the silly age. Okay, so it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our speaker today. I have had personal experience with the center that he now leads, and he also does pulpit fulfillment in the church that I go to. So Dr. Jim Hayes is the Executive Director of Mind and Spirit Counseling, as well as one of the center's spiritual directors. While you may not recognize their current name, the center just celebrated the 50th anniversary of providing services in the Des Moines area. Formerly known as Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center, their rebranding reflects the depth and breadth of expansion of support now provided. In his role since 2016, he advances the organization's mission to bring understanding, hope, and healing to people of all ages through counseling and education. Most of his studies and training have been spent exploring the question of how to lead a life that matters and how the human person might best flourish in creation. He studied French, literature, and history at Loras College, go Dubuque. He also holds a Master's of Divinity degree from St. Mary's Seminary and University in Baltimore and a doctorate in homiletics from the Aquinas Institute of St. Louis University. He did a graduate degree in philosophy at Pontifical University of St. Thomas in Rome, Italy, and as such, while his primary language is English, he is also conversational in French, Spanish, and Italian. He has experience in nonprofit administrations as well as experience in higher education at Iowa State University and Simpson College in a variety of administrative and faculty roles. Before that, he provided spiritual counseling and pastoral ministry in a wide variety of settings through priestly ministry in the Northeast Iowa Archdiocese of Dubuque. Sarah and Jim live in Des Moines with their 2 children. His vocation is also how he spends his time outside the counseling center. He regularly speaks at businesses, schools, church congregations, or other settings that might welcome an opportunity to explore mental health, hope, healing, and fullness of life. Please help me extend a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Jim Hayes.
Thank you very much. We'll start the timer. I know you've got a clock up here too, so we'll double up the timer to make sure we don't go too long. I don't mind the humor. I don't know who threw out that inappropriate comment over here. Because that's related to mental health, right? We got that going on for us. And I'm also aware, I know a good number of people in the room, and some of you I know from the golf course, so I'm aware there are liars and cheats in this room, so this is, oh, I'm kidding. That apparently didn't go over very well. You're all very virtuous. Yeah, you're all very virtuous. And I thank you so much for, Carter, for the gratitude thing. I just saw a feed for kids, believe it or not, for a grade school teacher who has an idea for January 1st. She's giving them all little jars and then a piece of paper once a week that they did get for saying something they were grateful for that week, and then collect them through the year, and for New Year's Eve to take the jar out and read through each one of them to say, wasn't it a great year? For each one of us to kind of put ourselves in that stance. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It relates really well, your mission and my own personal calling, if you think about Stephen Covey kinds of things and personal mission. It was in the introduction that I and those I encounter might flourish. And we might have a full life, a good life, a happy life for each one of us. So it's an opportunity to share some of that good news, and that's what got me to what was the Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center. We've been over the last 3 years working our way through a rebrand, and we're now Mind and Spirit Counseling Center, and the reason for that was we had some confusion around, right behind me is the Catholic Pastoral Center. That's a word that people would kind of struggle to understand. We wanted to make sure that we continued to capture the way that we do healing at our place through body, mind, and spirit. That was really important to us, and inclusivity was really central to it, because a lot of people confused us as being tied to just one particular faith tradition. That's not the case for us. We are very open to the life of the Spirit, but not from any particular tradition. And then the last piece is growth. Frankly, with mental health, it's grown so much in the pandemic for us, with telehealth and expanding the ways that we can deliver services for therapy in particular. We're even international in some cases with some of our programs now. So we didn't need to have Des Moines in our name. We're very regional and in fact national with some of the delivery that we do. So we're now Mind and Spirit Counseling Center. And I'm here today just to talk a little bit about mental health, but mostly I hope what the takeaway is from my time that I have with you is what can I do? Which is very Rotarian, right? How can I make a difference in my community? So to kick it off, we talk about at our place, our mission is to walk with people through counseling and education to find hope and healing and to lead a fulfilling life. We all do that, right? We're all walking with people. You're here walking with people at your table at the Rotary Club today. Maybe not through counseling and education, but through your shared mission and what you do as an organization. But also, you'd like to think for yourselves and for the people that you're sitting with, how am I helping you to have a little bit more full life today? And I'd like to just take a second, I'll get to Q&A when I finish. I'm going to be very disciplined with my timing because that was told me like 10 times. So don't worry, we're going to get out of here in time. But I do want to take just a second and maybe get 2 or 3 people to do a shout out for me. This is something that we're hearing almost daily. Mental health crisis. Right? Where do you encounter that? Just in your lives, where do you encounter that? It doesn't necessarily have to be personal. It might be social. It might be in your workplace. Just give me 2 or 3 shout outs. Where is this mental health crisis? Where's this thing going on?
One of the things that I do with my members with some frequency is ask them, how are you feeling emotionally? Because if I ask them how they're feeling, am I feeling good? How are you feeling emotionally? Well, I feel overwhelmed, I feel this, I feel that.
So getting conversations going, and how are you doing emotionally? I was told I'm supposed to repeat, right? How'd I do? That's a great, I'm going to get to that. That's an excellent example of ways that we can help each other, okay? So just day-to-day conversations we're encountering mental health, right? What else? Where is it a crisis?
Certainly in news coverage, mass shootings, that kind of thing, and also just in the difficulty families have in getting getting family members.
Yeah, turn on the news, whatever format you get the news from, and you're going to hear something about mental health, all right? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the apparent increase in homelessness that we read about all the time.
Sure, so homelessness, if you think about substance abuse, those kinds of things, which we know what are the causes for homelessness too, a lot of times it's mental health. I do a lot of volunteering in the homeless community. Lots of mental health issues, lots of vets dealing with PTSD, lots of people who are struggling with substance and chemicals that led to their homelessness in the first place. So it's all around us, and we haven't even mentioned much about kids, right? So I've got a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old Actually, she just turned 17. Bad dad. It was a week ago. Forgive me for that. They literally think about, am I going to be safe in school today? And they talk about that with their friends. You know, is it safe today, or what am I looking out for today? I mean, that's nothing to do with what my experience was like when I was going to high school and thinking about all kinds of shallow stuff. I wasn't thinking about survival. So it's around us in so many different ways. And so what I'm here today to do is to talk a little bit about, well, what can we do about that? I mean, on the large scale, we have lots of work to do when we think about the political environment and how to make sure that we have funding. We're supposed to be dealing with equity for primary health care when you think about your doctor and what happens with a therapist, and that's not true. I mean, there's systemic things that's just not the case. So though we say it's a really important thing, we aren't doing always as much as we can be doing with funding. I'm not going to get into politics about it, but that's a large scale piece of it. It does take a lot of work to do this kind of work. At our place, we have about 30 therapists who are there. We have a variety of services, and I don't want to do too much with you, but just to kind of think about what it takes to do body, mind, and spirit healing. We've got psychiatrists and nurse practitioners who are doing medical management for people who are doing just fine if they take their medications. If they go off their medications, they might run into a big crisis. We have psychologists who would do assessment for us, so people who might encounter disabilities or kids who have some kind of a learning disability or growth area that need testing in order for that to happen. They do therapy as well, our psychologists. We have social workers, we have licensed mental health counselors, and we have marriage and family counselors working with couples and with families. A whole array of delivery of services, and then we also do things related to the spiritual life. You heard in my introduction, I'm one of our spiritual directors there. That's not the same as therapy. It's just kind of walking with somebody as they're talking about how am I figuring out how to make meaning in my life today. So having someone to talk to is a big piece of this. It doesn't have to be somebody who's professionally trained. As we just heard, what a great example. Someone to talk to who's actually going to listen to me. And like I said, that's the mandate I want us to leave here with today. Certainly you can refer people to us, right? We're not lacking for customers. If you have encountered a mental health crisis in your family, and based on the statistics, most everyone in here has at some point in time. It might have been grief, it might have been divorce. Right now, as a collective, we're coming out of this pandemic which is a national and international trauma for us that we may not be paying attention to, but the literature that I'm reading about my profession is we're expecting 1,000% growth in need for services in the coming 10 years. Related to this, think about this with PTSD. I'll just give a simple example. So my 17-year-old daughter, when she graduated from 8th grade, not a big deal. She didn't have 8th grade graduation, right? She didn't get to have her 8th grade trip, which is something you look forward to from the time you're in kindergarten. Now, these are not survival kinds of things, right? But that's sitting in her craw in some ways as her younger sister is going through the things that she didn't get to do, right? Each one of us has a story like that, and some of them are more tragic than others, where we literally lost someone that we loved, right? That's serious trauma. And so how we deal with that stuff that gets embedded into our memories, into our bodies, we have professionals who walk with people through that healing process, but there aren't enough of them. There literally are not enough. If you called us today, you'd probably have a 6 to 8 week wait to get in, right? So if you're in crisis, what are you going to do? I'm sure there could be testimony here in the crowd about how you managed a mental health crisis in your family, but this is the main thing. If you get anything out of this today, you need to remember 3 numbers. Do you know what they are?
988.
Thank you. More and more and more we need to be saying that. We should know this like we know 911. 988. Say it.
988.
Everybody needs to get this into their brains. If you encounter any kind of crisis, it used to be the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's not just about suicide, it's about any kind of crisis. Certainly if somebody's in a crisis and thinking about ending their life, you want to get a person on the phone. You're going to get somebody immediately, or they're going to walk you through what kind of services you might be able to provide, and you're going to have somebody that will talk to you right there and right then. We're fortunate in Polk County that we've got some services as well that have come up in the last couple of years. First of all, at Broadlawns, we have a crisis center where you can go for 23 hours. If something's going on, you can literally walk in and you're going to have a whole array of services where someone will assess what's going on, and you can stay for 23 hours without getting admitted and try and get some help. Right? So that's going on. We have mobile crisis units with law enforcement where a social worker might come out and something's going on. I had this happen where I ran into a homeless guy in the street who was in the middle of some hallucinations and he was scaring people. And I had a mobile unit coming. I'd never seen them in action before, and it was awesome. They de-escalated it so quickly for this guy who was really scaring people a lot, and it could have gone the wrong way and gotten very violent very fast. So even in calling that, see, I think I've got a mental health crisis when you call 911 and you bring that up. 2 organizations have created an urgent care clinic. So you have Unity Point right over at Lutheran Hospital, I'm looking at right there, or Broadlawns as well, where you can, just like you got an urgent care for going in to see the doctor, you can do that if something's going on and just show up, and there are people on call that will kind of walk you through it while you're waiting for all the really wonderful therapists that are around in our community to do some of that one-on-one stuff. I do want to do one little plug for us about what we're doing with this. Our little piece of this is we have a training program at our place too. So we usually have 5, 6, 7 people who are doing training. This is a profession that does not have enough people, to be honest. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but we have like postdoctoral people and pre-doctoral fellows that are at our place. We have people who are master's level folks. You got to get trained somewhere to be a therapist, right? It's so fun when they do their first session and watch them like they are so geeked about, like, I finally talked to somebody about this and it really went well. And then we have people that we call residents. In Iowa, you have to be temporarily licensed for about 2 years practicing under a supervisor in order to get your full license. So we support all of those folks, but there's no money in it for us. And I'm not here to do fundraising. No, that's not something you can do. So we, for our 50th anniversary, created an endowment to carry our training program forward to make sure we're going to be committed. We're putting a stake in the ground saying we don't care if we lose money on this. We're going to pay this forward for all of our people who got trained, that there might be more therapists in the future, and we can't get enough of them. And I know, thank you, we've got Grandview, we just established your partnership when you started your master's levels program. We've got great programs right here in central Iowa, and we become a practice place, an internship for those folks along the way. So that's a commitment that we make. So 988 is one thing that you've got, right? Can you say it again? 988. Okay, you're not going to forget that one. Now, other things that you can do, like, there are great apps that are out there, right? So think about like Calm or Headspace, and I'm not here to shill for other organizations, but there's a lot of really bad ones too. It's just like going to the self-help section at a bookstore. It looks interesting, but there's no evidence basis for it, and those two actually have evidence basis for what they're doing. There's some things where you can get a therapist as well, but you can do some of your own work, right? In your own mental health, or recommending somebody to kind of take their phone out and do a little bit of work. Our therapists actually work with some apps where they'll recommend between sessions, just use this to help manage your mental health between now and the next session. But the biggest thing for me that I think with this kind of onslaught that we have is informing ourselves. So I'll give you just 2 examples of some reference stuff you can do. Mentalhealth.gov, okay? Government organization. So many resources. And I'll give you an example of what you just said. What's the question you asked? How are you doing emotionally today?
How are you feeling emotionally?
Okay, so that's a great question. And what I thought is, so if you go to mentalhealth.gov, here's some things that they put on there. I've been worried about you. Can we talk about what's going on in your life? That's a scary question, right? You got to have some sense of trust when you're going to ask somebody something like that. But if you're seeing somebody in distress, you're noticing them at work, they're not engaged, you're a manager, and you're like, something's not right. This is not the same employee that was here 6 months ago. How do you begin to ask that kind of a deeper question of someone? Because that in itself, knowing that someone is listening, is a huge piece for helping out with mental health. You can let them know, look, I know this isn't a normal conversation, but I really like listening to people. It seems like something's going on. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Just an invitation. It seems like you're going through a difficult time. Is there anything I can do to help you? Just invitation, open-ended kind of things that we can do for each other to work with our own mental health. Now, if it's something that's related to substance abuse, there's another organization that the government has. It's called SAMHSA, so Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration. Okay, if you can remember that. I know that's quite an acronym to get after, but substance abuse you can remember, right? Mental health you can remember, administration. Put those letters together, and you can find a whole bunch of resources. If you see somebody, you know, a lot of us, you don't need to read very far into what's happened in this pandemic. I've got a brother who was the president of Brown Forman. He just retired a couple of weeks ago. They sell booze, and boy, business is good. The pandemic was really good for alcohol and liquor and for other abuses that we might use to kind of self-medicate because of things that we need to do. Sometimes that goes a little too far, and the next thing you know, you've got an addiction and your life is spinning out of control. There's wonderful resources that they have on that site that you can get to. So these are all things that we can do for each other to care for one another in our mental health. Now at the center, what we will do is, I'll give you an example of a story of a young girl, and the way we work is every Thursday morning, so just this morning, I'm coming fresh from this, we allot 3 hours of our week to consultation time. So these 30 really gifted therapists who are together in our building will come together and they'll share with each other stories, things they're struggling with, clients or patients that are a challenge to them, they're bumping up against their own limits or their own training and are not quite sure what to do. And I am not a therapist. I'm a preacher and a teacher, and that's why I have to have a timer on so I shut up in time. But I listen to these things, and it is amazing to me. The way that they support each other and the way they bring their gifts and skills together to help. And this young girl came to us. We have a partnership with a sub-grant with an organization called LUNA, which is Latinas Unidas por Nuevo Amanecer, which is women working with domestic abuse, violence. Okay? So this girl, growing up in a violent household, in an abusive household, and this therapist, colleague of mine, is telling this story, and I've got 2 girls, and I'm listening to what this young girl is going through, and I just feel this weight on my chest. I mean, I just literally, like, physically, like, how is this kid gonna survive in a house like that? And she does this case and presents it to her colleagues and said, did you think about doing this? Did you try that? Hey, how about untangling the trauma and trying this kind of thing? And gave this counselor hope, right, for what she might be able to do and some new strategies on what she might be able to do. And this therapist came to me about a year later, because I went and talked to her. I was really upset by it. I was just like, I was struggling personally because of kind of like what we call vicarious trauma. She came back to me a year later and she said, Jim, I know this was really important to you, so I want to tell you something. She's doing great. It's still emotional for me to think that it's even possible to heal in that kind of a situation, and it works. This is evidence-based stuff, highly trained people, and they can get people through something that looks like it's impossible to get out of. And we need more people like them. And the difference for us and what we do at Mind and Spirit Counseling Center, we're a nonprofit too. So we help people regardless of their ability to pay. We help as many as we can. We take insurance, but we'll take sliding scale, we'll take free, we'll do whatever we can to help as many people as we can. So our people aren't only committed as professionals, they're committed in terms of social justice and access for mental health, and in this distinctive kind of mind, body, and spirit approach as well. And we fill that in as a nonprofit. That's what I do. I come out and do stuff like this, or I talk to people, or I go to churches, or I'll go to synagogues. I'll go anywhere and talk about the place. And most of my time is spent raising money to make it go. So if you're ever looking for a volunteer opportunity, which I know Rotarians have a good spirit of volunteerism, if you're passionate about mental health and you'd like to hop onto a board too, we love to get as many board members as we can doing this work with us. So that's what I want to present for you today, that it is a crisis, but there are ways out, and we're a part of the solution. Not just professionals who are working in a counseling center, we're all a part of this solution by paying a little bit more attention to each other, asking the right kinds of questions of one another, and if we get ourselves into a crisis that seems overwhelming, we can tell somebody to call. Okay, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to just do some Q&A to kind of see where we'd like to go with this. I know I don't want to take a lot of time, but I'm kind of curious about your experiences and maybe if I can be a resource to answering some questions. Yeah.
As you're talking, it made me think about mental health first aid. Is
Thank
there
you.
training provided locally for that?
The questions about mental health first aid, thank you. And yes, we do this with our own staff too, so like our receptionists and things. So this is a program you can do. Iowa State Outreach does it, the state does it. There's lots of people who train in this. Sometimes you get a free training, or you can pay for a training too. There's some trainers that will make a slight charge for it. So in your workplace, they'll do this mental health first aid. It's a curriculum that they've got a variety of time that it might take, so you can set aside some time at your workplace or someplace that you congregate with other people, and they'll do a little bit of training. What happens if you encounter someone in crisis? How do you manage that? How do you de-escalate that? That's a really important thing, and mental health first aid, you can look that up, and the programs are all around us to do that training. It helps our receptionists because they're not trained clinicians, and they might see someone in crisis coming into our place, and it gives them a sense of confidence about how to manage, not like how to fix the whole thing, but how to manage this moment in time.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is, what is your advice to individuals that are still resisting this new normal of talking about mental health in the workplace?
What to do about stigma, really, if that's a fair way to put it, that it seems like it's reducing, right? I think young people in particular are more than open about talking about seeing their therapist in the same way that they go to their orthopedist or orthodontist. You know, it's just normal. So some of the stigma is generational or demographic, it might be, and there are certain communities. I mean, we struggle in terms of, we have access and a very affordable services to people in the community, but people from communities of color might not come to us because they want to make sure, first of all, does anybody there look like me? And secondly, my community doesn't believe in weakness, and certainly not showing it to others. And that's something we all wrestle with. That's why we call it stigma. It's getting better, but it's definitely not reduced. I mean, I don't know. I could do some kind of a poll in here, I suppose, but how comfortable would you be telling somebody that you suffer from anxiety or depression? For our 50th, we had an event, and I know a couple people in here at least that were there. We had Steve Carlin from KCCI just do a little talk, a little keynote during our 50th anniversary about a month ago. And he's very public about his anxiety and depression, but he hadn't been for most of his life until he was well into his 50s. And in his speech, he was like, why did I waste so much time trying to hide this? First of all, because feeling better, but secondly, because in putting that out in public for a public person like that, thousands of people reacted to that and reached out to him saying, I'm so glad you said this, I've struggled with this as well, and I don't talk to anybody about it. So to make it okay, that's another one. There's a program here. It started in Minnesota. United Way has partnered with this, and a Healthier Iowa hashtag Make It Okay to reduce stigma. They have all kinds of resources for helping people to talk about mental health. If you break your arm and go to the emergency room right now, not that that's going to happen on the way out of Rotary, because I'm sure your liability is good. But if that did, right, and you came to Rotary next week and you had your arm in a sling, you'd be like, yeah, I fell on my way out and they did a great job. I ran over here to Methodist right next door and they fixed me up in the ER. No big deal. Why is it a big deal to say that, you know what, I lost my dad this year and I am just not coming back. I'm not feeling right about it, and I'm talking to a therapist about the grief, and I can't believe how helpful that is to me. Is that weakness? Isn't it just health? Right? And we make this sort of distinction of like mental health and physical health and spiritual well-being like we're three different people. Right? It's all health. That's it. I don't have an answer to that one other than to normalize it. If it's going on in your family, if it's going on for you, it's okay to talk about it. Certainly for those of us that are employers, to make sure that it's okay for people to talk about it in the workplace, that they can do that and they can let their supervisor know, hey, I'm dealing with this. I really need to go to an appointment with my therapist this afternoon, and I'm going to set up this weekly time because this is what's going on in my life right now. You don't have to tell the whole story. But I've got, people who are at my place that's what they do. They go to therapy every week, and I'm aware of that in the same way that I'm aware that they might go to their dentist. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Yes, please.
At what age would you recommend talking to your children about mental health?
At what age to talk to your children about mental health? I already admitted that I'm a bad dad, so there's a caveat to this. There's curriculum for this that's certainly happening for counselors in schools, right? So kids when they're going to school right away. In terms of like talking about your own story too and telling kids, I think it's really good to normalize that as soon as they're, you know, of a capacity where they're sort of whatever rational is, that varies depending on the kid. But I think somewhere between 5 and 10. I mean, we have what's called Children Overcoming Obstacles of Life. It's called our COOL wing. And we see kids at birth for assessment because there might be some developmental delay or something that they're working on. But kids 5 through 18, that's their whole business. So kids are getting help. It's okay probably to talk about it as well. I would love to talk to one of my cool therapists about that, about like resources for that, and then maybe I could let you know, Matt, and because I don't want to act like I've got the right answer to that question. Okay. Yes?
What are you saying, I mean, you talk a lot about community and mental health therapy. Drilling down a little bit, what are you saying when it comes to young people who are involved in athletics, about the pressures that they may feel, any anxiety?
So young people in athletics and performance, and high performers in particular, that's like a marketplace unto itself. Because, you know, people are really driven and successful. Often there's something related. This is the blessing and the curse, right? So your OCD. I mean, like, you know, there was a famous basketball player at Iowa State who came out publicly with his OCD, and the reason he could make so many damn jump shots is because he did 1,000 a day and he couldn't do 999, right? I have to do all of these. So that kind of wiring that's there, that's definitely present for people. I think the anxiety and depression, we have a lot of athletes who come to our place. Another place where this gets played out, depending on the sport, is eating disorders. That's rampant in athletics, depending on, like, think about wrestlers making weight, that's a classic one, but runners, swimmers, there's some that are pretty specific individualized sports where that's a big mental illness that runs with it. I don't know, you know, I'm not gonna act like I know the answer to this question without doing some research on it, how that is relative to the rest of the general population. But typically with athletes, and particularly high-performing athletes, that kind of drive brings with it some needs of dealing with anxiety or depression when you don't perform well, those kinds of things. So it's definitely present, and I can say with confidence, we see a lot of athletes at our place. I'm aware of time. I've got 60 seconds. I'll do one more.
I make no pretense of knowing anything about the business you're in, but it does seem to me that we have become a society in which we ask someone, how are you doing, what's happening in your life, whatever the question might be, then we really hope they don't try to tell us. Because we want to move right on to something else we want to talk about. And I think that as individuals, and no better place to talk about it than Rotary, I think there's a real service that we can provide on a very amateur basis to those around us who could just act as a sounding board, confidential or protecting sounding board where people can talk about these things.
Yeah. So I don't know if you could hear that or not, but you know, if you ask somebody how they're doing, get ready because they might actually tell you, and that might take a while. So I mean, I think the right time and place for some of the questions. I mean, that whole old adage of 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? That we're better listeners than talkers, and you know, we're living in a culture where the louder you are, the more you get heard. You know, I'll just say this to conclude because maybe it'll win me some benefit with my spouse. I really pay attention because I'm doing this all the time in my marriage, where I'm listening to Sarah and she's telling me something, but I know what I have to say is more important than what she has to say because my deal is bigger than her deal, right? And it's amazing to me how intentionally, for both of us, saying, you know, I'm gonna just listen and I'm not gonna talk. And if I keep my mouth shut, even for like 90 seconds, what a difference that made. Because I would have probably said 3 stupid things in that 90 seconds that weren't helpful at all. And just by sitting there and like disciplining myself to say, I'm gonna listen rather than talk, it's amazing what you might learn, and it might even help your marriage. So thank you very much, appreciate being here.
That was a heck of a way to end, because I'm married and I suffer from that. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Jim, for spending time with the Rotary Club of Des Moines today. We thank you for sharing your message. It's super important. We're thankful for you and thankful for the service that you provide and your organization provides to this community. As a token of our appreciation, we're going to donate a book to the Des Moines Public Library in your honor. The book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Van Collection. This is a van that was made possible as a function of our $40,000 gift that we make available yearly through the Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation. Proud of that.
I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll do solo. Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like, as I've done many, many times before, I'd like you to consider, as we consider upcoming meetings, please think about who you know would be an outstanding addition to our club. There are a number of very interesting guests at our club today, and we're including our guest speaker, who we had a nice conversation about joining the Rotary Club of Des Moines. This podium of ours is the best way to get the message out about one of our greatest value propositions. It happens that the next 3 meetings are up in front of you. Next week is our annual meeting, so there'll be a little bit of business next week as we rotate officers for the club. But next week is also when we donate $40,000 to this community, and so please be here to learn about where that money is going. On the 15th is our holiday luncheon, so make sure, and then of course we're not getting together on the 22nd because of the holiday. Make sure though, if you are going to be here, that you RSVP by 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings to Kitty for you and or your guest. One more note about bell ringing. We have 22 minus 8 would be 14 spots to fill. If you can't make it, we understand. There is, however, an envelope on your way out just beside the sign up. If you could see it in your heart to give a little bit of cash to that envelope, we'll make that be the starting donation for our kettle. So with that, thank you for being here and thank you for being part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. We are adjourned.